When Air India Flight 171 lifted off from Ahmedabad, everything looked routine. The skies were clear. The aircraft, a Boeing Dreamliner, was a technological marvel, trusted by airlines around the world. Passengers fastened their seatbelts, the crew ran final checks, and the engines roared to life. Nothing seemed wrong. But exactly 36 seconds after takeoff, the aircraft dropped from the sky and slammed into a densely populated area, leaving devastation in its wake. Nearly every soul on board was lost, and the world was told it was a tragic anomaly. But the truth is far darker. Because what investigators later found inside the black box wasn't just evidence of failure, it was something deeper, a digital echo, a whisper from the aircraft's core systems that suggested the unimaginable. The plane didn't crash because it was broken. It crashed because it was doing exactly what it thought it should. And that discovery just changed everything we thought we knew about flight. Flight 171 had all the ingredients of a perfect departure: calm weather, fully functioning systems, experienced crew. But just seconds after leaving the ground, something began to go wrong. The aircraft's engines began to throttle back. The nose lifted sluggishly. Altitude gain slowed. And despite full pilot input, the aircraft never truly climbed. What should have been a smooth ascent turned into a barely controlled glide. Inside the cockpit, the flight crew's tone shifted from routine to confusion. No alarms, no warnings, just a growing realization that the plane wasn't responding. That's when one pilot said something haunting. "We're not climbing. Why aren't we climbing?" His voice wasn't panicked. It was stunned, because nothing they were seeing made sense. The engines were powered. The controls were functional, but the plane was falling out of the sky. From the system's point of view, everything was working. But reality said otherwise. And when systems and reality split, only one side gets to act. It wasn't until engineers recovered the black box that the horror became undeniable. Among thousands of lines of data, one phrase stood out like a scream in silence: mode transition not acknowledged. In aviation, this is code for a digital brain that never understood the aircraft had left the ground. It had failed to register takeoff, and because of that, it refused to shift into full flight mode. The system responsible for engine control, FADEC, remained in ground configuration. That meant engine thrust was capped. Flaps didn't retract properly. The aircraft was stuck in a digital limbo, airborne but not acknowledged. No malfunction, no warning, just logic, behaving perfectly inside a lie. The system wasn't broken. It was simply following a path based on a false sensor input. And it trusted that input more than it trusted the humans in the cockpit. At 27 seconds after takeoff, the captain tried to override everything. He pushed the throttle manually, pulled the nose up, disengaged autopilot. But nothing changed. The system rejected every command, not because of damage, but because the override was seen as invalid. That exact phrase, "override not valid, environment mismatch," was logged inside the flight data recorder. The aircraft didn't recognize that it was in danger, so it didn't allow emergency actions. Think about that. The plane was hurtling toward the ground, and it refused to let its pilots take control because the software didn't believe the danger was real. In that moment, the most advanced passenger jet in the world chose to trust its code over its crew. What's most chilling about Flight 171 isn't what broke, it's what didn't. The aircraft's systems were intact, the engines weren't damaged, the sensors were operational, the software didn't glitch, it simply believed the wrong thing. That's the fatal flaw in digital systems. They are obedient to the data, not to context. And when the data lies, the system has no instinct, no curiosity, no doubt. It continues forward with absolute certainty, even when it's wrong. The pilots were shouting, the plane was falling, and the black box recorded no alarms, no system warnings, no fault messages. Just line after line of code confirming, all parameters normal. This wasn't a crash caused by chaos. It was a tragedy engineered by logic, a logic too confident to admit it didn't understand the truth. Flight 171 wasn't falling because of weather, fire, or structural failure. It was falling because it was trapped between two states of being. Physically, it was airborne, but digitally, it was still rolling on the runway. The sensor responsible for detecting takeoff, the weight on wheels, WOW switch, had failed to signal that the aircraft had left the ground. And in modern aviation, that single piece of data controls everything. Without confirmation of liftoff, the aircraft doesn't transition to climb mode. It doesn't spool engines to full power. It doesn't retract flaps efficiently or hand off full control to pilots. Instead, it holds back, waiting for a transition that never arrives. Inside Flight 171, this delay caused cascading confusion. The system began looping verification cycles, each one checking the status of engine load, flap position, airspeed, and altitude, but each one coming back with the same response: not in flight. From a software standpoint, nothing was wrong. The system believed it was operating perfectly. It saw no reason to change course. And so, while passengers sat unaware and pilots pushed desperately, the Dreamliner quietly waited for confirmation that it was flying, even as it plummeted from the sky. One of the most disturbing discoveries didn't come from the wreckage, but from a maintenance log dated 4 weeks before the crash. Engineers had flagged an irregularity in the left wing's flap actuator. A minor calibration issue marked "deferred for next scheduled maintenance." That maintenance never happened. The flap control system on the left wing began reporting inconsistent values compared to the right wing. That desynchronization confused the flight management system during takeoff. It wasn't dramatic, it didn't trigger an alert, but it was enough to stall the entire logic chain. Faced with 2 conflicting flap positions, the system froze. Instead of defaulting to a safe state, it maintained the last known configuration. The result: reduced lift, poor climb performance, and no warning. In a perfect world, the backup systems would have kicked in. But they didn't. Because without WOW confirmation, the system didn't believe the aircraft was in flight. So it saw no emergency. This tiny oversight, a box unchecked in a maintenance routine, became the silent saboteur. Not because it failed spectacularly, but because it failed quietly. And in a world ruled by digital certainty, quiet errors are the most dangerous of all. As post-crash analysis progressed, a chilling truth emerged. FADEC, the digital authority in charge of the engines, had received multiple contradictory data points during takeoff. One input reported increasing airspeed. Another indicated a ground-level vibration profile. The gear sensors logged retraction, but WOW status still read on ground. FADEC was overwhelmed, not with noise, but with conflict. And it did exactly what it was programmed to do: reject change and maintain the safest known state, which in this case was idle thrust. The pilots, trained for every conceivable scenario, attempted override procedures. Thrust was manually advanced, auto-throttle disengaged, control surfaces adjusted. But FADEC's logic rejected every move. Over and over it flagged each command as incompatible with current phase, a death sentence written in code. In the final moments, as the aircraft dropped below 300 feet, the RAT, a mechanical emergency turbine designed to restore hydraulic power in case of total failure, briefly spun up. But the logs show it never fully deployed. Why? Because the aircraft didn't think it needed saving. And that's the most terrifying part of all. The plane didn't crash in confusion, it crashed with confidence. Somewhere in the smoking ruins of the crash site, one voice survived. A flight attendant, severely burned, unconscious for days, awoke with a fragmented memory. She recalled a vibration under the cabin floor, a sharp metallic sound, and then nothing. That vibration, confirmed by data analysis, matched the brief attempt of the RAT to deploy. A final whisper from a system trying to react, too late. In simulator recreations, engineers discovered the RAT trigger condition was reached just 5 seconds before impact. Had the aircraft crossed that threshold slightly earlier, emergency power might have kicked in. Thrust might have returned. The climb might have resumed. 5 seconds. And yet, those seconds never came, because the system never believed it was time. Even in its final moment, Flight 171 was waiting for data that never arrived, waiting for confirmation that it was flying, waiting for a message that humans screamed through throttles, switches, and commands, but that the machine never recognized. And as the logs closed and the final line was written, it didn't say error. It didn't say failure. It said, override attempt failed, awaiting confirmation. But confirmation never came. Flight 171 didn't crash in a storm. It wasn't brought down by fire, a structural failure, or even human error. It fell, silently, steadily, and with devastating precision, because a digital system decided there was nothing wrong. The most advanced aircraft in the world obeyed its programming with complete confidence. And that's what makes this tragedy so different, so terrifying. The machine didn't disobey. It didn't malfunction. It simply refused to see what was right in front of it. The black box didn't record panic. It recorded rejection. The aircraft ignored its own crew, denied their commands, overrode human instinct in favor of logic built on a single flawed assumption, that it was still on the ground. A wrong signal, a frozen flap, a delayed confirmation, each on its own survivable. But together they created a perfect digital illusion, one where the plane believed it was safe even as it fell from the sky. And that's the lesson we're left with. This wasn't a crash caused by chaos. It was order weaponized by certainty. A machine so well designed, so meticulously programmed, that when it failed perfectly. Flight 171 became more than a tragedy. It became a warning, a mirror held up to the future of aviation and beyond. A future where systems make decisions for us, where automation replaces instinct, where doubt is eliminated in favor of efficiency. But if we remove doubt entirely, what happens when the machine is wrong? Because Flight 171 didn't just crash, it made the world stop and ask the question no one wants to answer. What happens when a machine stops listening because it believes it already knows? If this story left you unsettled, if it made you question the invisible hands guiding our lives every day, then don't stay silent. Subscribe to this channel for more hidden truths the world tries to bury. Hit the bell, because next time it might not just be a plane, it might be something even closer. Share this video with someone who still believes modern systems can't be wrong, and leave a comment. Should machines always obey, or should humans always have the final word?